From London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Juliette Mann. Our top stories this hour. Iran denies involvement in a drone attack on a base in Jordan, which killed 3 US soldiers and injured dozens. The US has vowed to respond to the strike, the first American military death since the Israel-Hamas conflict started. Israel launches a renewed assault on Gaza City amid claims it's killed dozens of Hamas fighters. And Italy's Prime Minister unveils a long-awaited plan to expand influence in Africa. But the continent's leaders call for action over promises. Iran has denied involvement in a drone attack that killed 3 US troops and injured dozens of others near Jordan's border with Syria. President Joe Biden has vowed to respond, saying the attack on the US base was carried out by Iran-backed militant groups. It's the first time US soldiers have been killed in the region since the latest conflict in Gaza began in October. The attack has sparked fears of a wider escalation. Well, our correspondent Ehsan Kavani is in the city of Nain in Iran. Ehsan, what more can you tell us?
Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Nasser Kanani reiterated in his weekly presser that the, quote, regional resistance forces do not take orders from Iran. This is an approach we have seen from Tehran, particularly after the October war in Gaza. Iran says it politically supports what it calls the resistance forces in the region, including Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, and all anti-US fighters in Iraq. However, Tehran says such resistant groups are now politically capable of doing anything, and they are self-sufficient, and they make independent decisions according to their country's national interests. Here is what Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said during his Monday morning presser.
Repeating baseless accusations against Iran is the projection and conspiracy of those who see their interests in dragging America's feet into a new battle in the region and inciting it in the expansion and escalation of the crisis to cover up their problems.
And this attack is sparking fears of an escalation in the already tense situation in the Middle East.
Tehran says it does not welcome the expansion of clashes in the region. As Iran's foreign ministry says, the U.S. forces' constant and recurrent violation of the national sovereignty of Iraq and Syria, as well as the bomb attacks on people and groups in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen, have escalated what it calls the cycle of instability. So Tehran says such attacks on U.S. forces are direct effect of Washington's presence in the Middle East region, and they have nothing to do with Iran. Moreover, such claims by the U.S. over Iran's involvement in these attacks should be proven, which seems to be really difficult. Iranian military officials say if the country is attacked for any reason, it is militarily prepared for defending the country and for giving a crushing response, as we witnessed vast military drills earlier this month in which newly developed air defense systems were tested across Iran's southern coasts of the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. Juliette.
Thanks very much, Ehsan Kavani in Iran. But let's get the reaction now from the United States, where our correspondent John Terrett is in New York. Hi there, John. So what will Joe Biden likely do?
Hey, Juliette. Well, Juliette, as you can imagine, this is the lead story on all the morning newspapers and the morning news programs here. Nothing more important than this story in America right now. And yesterday, Sunday, President Biden was campaigning in South Carolina, at the south of the country, which is the next big stop on the primary process for the Democrats and the Republicans, though their primaries will be on different dates. On being told of the news, the president vowed to retaliate against whoever was responsible for the attack. He said, "We will hit back," but, he said, it'll be at a time and and manner of my choosing. Now, we know that President Biden blames radical Iran-backed groups for the attack that happened yesterday. And just to remind you what happened, it was a drone attack, so a highly technical attack. It came as military personnel were asleep at what they call Tower 22, which is a support network for U.S. special operations in the region on the Jordanian-Syrian border. And we also know that nearby, pretty much opposite where the attack happened, is another base where the U.S. monitors Iran. The result of it, 3 dead, 34 wounded, 8 of them had to be medevaced out. Some of them have very bad brain injuries. The Islamic Resistance has claimed it. Now, the Islamic Resistance is a loose coalition of groups who are against Israel's operation in Gaza and U.S. support for it. So we're talking about ISIS, Al-Qaeda, many Iran-backed groups, potentially the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, of course. Iran itself, as we just heard from our correspondent, is denying any involvement in the attack. The Defense Secretary at the Pentagon, Lloyd Austin, said that he's outraged and deeply saddened. And analysts here this morning on morning television are saying that this attack has basically changed the rules of engagement, coming as it did completely out of the blue with no warning, no prior back and forth between Tehran or Washington, D.C. My understanding, it is the first U.S. deaths of this kind since the Israel-Gaza operation began. And let me tell you what the U.S. does want to do and what the U.S. does not want to do. It does want to retaliate, and it clearly will, and when it does, it'll be widely publicized. What it does not want to do is create a wider conflagration in the region, dragging Iran in. To put it simply, whatever they do, they'll be careful with their response so that Iran doesn't overreact the other way. Juliet?
John Terrett in New York, thank you very much. Well, Israel has launched an attack in Gaza's main northern city, weeks after pulling back from the area. The country's military claims to have killed dozens of Hamas fighters across the enclave. Meanwhile, the United Nations Agency for Palestinians has warned it won't be able to continue operations beyond February if funding's not resumed. A string of countries cut support to the agency in the wake of allegations that some staff were involved in the October the 7th Hamas attacks in Israel. Well, our correspondent, Noor Harazin, is in Gaza. Noor, Khan Yunis remains at the centre of much of the fighting in Gaza now. What can you tell us? What's the latest from there?
Well, yes, regarding the city of Khan Yunis, it looks like we have 3 different stories. I mean, coming from the Israeli media and the Israeli military, they say that they are now taking control of most of Khan Yunis city. They launched attacks, killing dozens of Hamas members. On the other hand, Hamas from its side and Al-Qassam Brigades, which is the militant wing of Hamas, over the past hours published on social media statements and also videos saying that they targeted several Israeli tanks in Khan Yunis, killing dozens of Israeli soldiers. At the same time, there is a story from the residents, the people who are still inside Khan Yunis, the journalists, the medical teams who are still inside the Al-Nasser Hospital and the Al-Amal Hospital. They are saying that, yes, Israel launched a series of Israeli strikes overnight. We are talking about dozens of people that were killed, and the ambulances actually and the paramedics are not able to evacuate them. Only an hour ago, an Israeli strike hit a building next to the Al-Amal Hospital. A number of people were killed, including a woman. Her body was thrown in the street just in front of the gate of the Al-Amal Hospital. However, even when the paramedics tried to evacuate her body, they were shot dead by the Israeli snipers. At the same time, hundreds, if not thousands of Palestinians continue to flee their homes from Khan Yunis city to either Rafah or Deir al-Balah after a new Israeli order of evacuation in areas in central Khan Yunis.
And no, Hamas says it will only release the hostages if Israel withdraws its troops from Gaza.
Well, yes, this is something significant actually, because in the previous negotiations, the Qatari-Egyptian brokered negotiations between Hamas and Israel, most of the talks from Hamas were actually talking about a ceasefire, a complete ceasefire for Israel to stop its war in Gaza in order for Hamas to release any of the hostages. However, now apparently something is changing now, and Hamas required and asking Israel to withdraw from northern Gaza and the central Gaza City. However, this is what is happening here on the ground. Even though 2 weeks ago the Israeli army, the Israeli troops actually withdrew from large areas in Gaza and central Gaza, where many Palestinians managed to go back to their homes. However, everything is changed 12 hours ago when the Israeli troops actually incursioned again in central Gaza, and this morning there was a new evacuation order for Palestinians who are residing in Al-Rimal and areas around the Ashifa, and all of these areas are located in central Gaza.
Noor Harazin in Gaza, thank you very much. A Palestinian man has been shot dead in the Israeli city of Haifa after driving his car into a naval compound and attacking soldiers with an axe. Our correspondent Sarah Coates is in Tel Aviv. Sarah, what more do we know about this attack on a military base in Haifa?
Hello there, Juliet. Well, look, this happened just a few hours ago, about 100 kilometres back this way from where I'm standing in that northern city of Haifa. We do understand, according to witnesses, that there was a number of soldiers. There were a number of soldiers milling outside this base. A car then ran down an IDF soldier in his 20s before the assailant exited the vehicle armed with an axe, trying to attack a number of other military personnel. Now, he was then shot dead while another person exited the vehicle, tried to flee on foot before being captured by security forces. Now, Israeli media is reporting that this driver was an Israeli resident. They say he had an ID on him. He appears to be from the northern Arab town of Tamra. Now, according to Israeli police, this soldier who was mowed down by the vehicle, he's a 20-year-old. He's been taken to Rambam Hospital. That's a huge hospital in Israel's north, and is in a serious condition and is undergoing now a number of surgeries for extreme wounds to his legs. So this is the very latest there, and we can expect to hear more once information is released on these two potential assailants.
Sarah, I want to talk to you about the weekend talks, the summit held in France aimed at securing a hostage deal. What's the reaction been in Israel?
Well, look, Juliet, anger is certainly boiling over here in Israel. People are demanding a deal must be done now to bring these 130 or so Israeli captives back from the Gaza Strip. Families have been slamming the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying not enough has been done, saying that his military operation seems more important than bringing these innocent people home. They say that if these captives are not brought home right now, most of them will return in a coffin. Now, we did get a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office a little earlier today with regards to these talks happening in Paris. They're calling it constructive, with Netanyahu's office saying that discussions will continue into this week. Now, Israeli media is reporting that this deal could happen in a number of stages. The first would see non-soldiers and wounded people set free. It would take place over a 30-day pause in fighting, where a number of Palestinian prisoners would also be released from Israeli jails. Now, the second stage would reportedly see soldiers released in return for a larger amount of Palestinian prisoners, and potentially another 30-day pause in fighting. But look, Hamas has been continuing to say, as Noor just said there, that there will be no release of captives until there is a full ceasefire, leaving Hamas in power, which is something that is certainly a red line for Israel. And look, just over the last few minutes, we have had some unconfirmed reports that Israel's Prime Minister has actually said to the families of these captives that they are only playing into the demands of Hamas by ordering a deal be done now. So certainly a developing situation, and one that is putting a lot of pressure on the Israeli government.
Huge pressure. Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv, thank you very much. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Italy seeks to boost ties with Africa, unveiling a $5 billion plan targeting migration and energy. We're live in Rome next.
The 27th of January marks the 60th anniversary of China and France beginning their diplomatic relationship and starting a historic new chapter. We'll be covering the partnership in detail with week-long special coverage and meeting the bridge builders who have dedicated their lives to strengthening ties between the two countries. China-France 60 years, beginning Saturday, the 27th of January, on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Iran denies involvement in a drone attack on a base in Jordan which killed 3 US soldiers and injured dozens. The US has vowed to respond to the strike, the first American military death since the Hamas attacks of October the 7th. And Israel launches a renewed assault on Gaza City amid claims it's killed dozens of Hamas fighters. Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, has unveiled a long-awaited plan aimed at boosting economic ties with Africa. The plan was announced during a summit in Rome, attended by more than 24 African leaders and European Union officials. Meloni outlined a series of initiatives, pledging an initial $5 billion to create an energy hub and introduce measures to curb immigration. Our correspondent Giles Gibson is in Rome. Good to see you, Giles. So what more do we know about Italy's plan?
Well, in the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's speech to the delegates gathered inside the Italian Senate building, we got a lot of sort of the big picture, her long-term vision, but really still not very much in terms of the fine details, you know, exactly where these investments will be made, exactly what the projects will be in different countries in Africa. We saw Giorgia Meloni in her speech talking about the slogan for this summit, a bridge for common growth, and also saying that her plan is to turn Italy into a natural hub for energy supply for the whole of Europe. So not just natural gas, but the plan is also to bring in solar power and other renewable energy from Africa across Italy and then out into the rest of Europe. But of course, Italy is also facing a lot of competition when it comes to investing in Africa, not just from China, for example, which of course has rolled out all sorts of projects across the continent through its Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. You also have Russia looking to find new partners inside Africa as it really sees itself isolated by the West in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine. And there is also skepticism about whether Italy's investment here, that $6 billion figure, is going to be enough to compete with some of those heavy hitters like China and Russia. And that's why I think we are seeing at this summit representatives from the International Monetary Fund and also from the EU, which of course has its Global Gateway scheme, which is seen really as a competitor to China's Belt and Road Initiative.
So, Charles, what are African leaders making of this? What's their response to Meloni's overtures, to her pledges?
Well, we saw some skepticism, really, from the chair of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, when he addressed the proceedings inside the Italian Senate. He said that the continent as a whole had not been consulted about this plan, the Mattei plan, despite the fact that it's been months in the making. And he also said, and I'm quoting him here, that there's a need to move from words to actions, saying that we can no longer be satisfied with mere promises that are often not kept. I think we also have to note here that for Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, and really for the Europeans overall, this whole question of investing in Africa is also inextricably linked with the question of migration. We saw Giorgia Meloni in her speech talking about how they need to address the root causes upstream of illegal migration, of those boats that cross the Mediterranean Sea aiming to reach Italian soil and therefore, of course, claim asylum within the European Union. So, yes, on the one hand, you have the Italians, you have the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen here making these long-term pledges about investing in Africa, but you also have four politicians like Giorgia Meloni, that short-term goal of bringing down migration levels across the Mediterranean Sea.
Giles Gibson in Rome, thank you very much. The DPRK has test-fired 2 submarine-launched cruise missiles, the second test of the weapons system within a week. State media said the tests of the new generation of nuclear-capable cruise missiles was overseen by leader Kim Jong-un. It was reported the missile hit an unspecified island target after more than 2 hours' flight. The test is not banned under UN sanctions on the DPRK's nuclear program, which outlaws ballistic missile testing. Finland's former Prime Minister, Alexander Stubb, has narrowly won the first round of the country's presidential election. Stubb will face Liberal Green Party member Pekka Haavisto in a runoff vote next month. It comes as the Nordic country, a new member of the NATO alliance, wrestles with neighbouring Russia over the Ukraine conflict and an influx of asylum seekers. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has announced plans to ban disposable vapes in a bid to crack down on their growing use amongst children. The proposed ban is an extension of new laws which will make it illegal to sell tobacco products to anyone born after 2009 as he tries to create a smoke-free generation. Refillable vapes will be sold in plain packaging with a restricted number of flavours. Airbus has unveiled its first global aircraft recycling project in China. The European plane manufacturer has had a presence in the country for nearly 3 decades, and now the company is expanding its investment in the world's second largest aviation market. Our correspondent Ning Hong reports from Beijing.
In 2008, Airbus set up the company's first civil aircraft assembly line outside of Europe in China. 15 years on, the facility in Tianjin is equipped to assemble the entire A320 series. Plans for a second final assembly line are also in progress.
Airbus has been a part of China for a long time and vice versa. We have been present in China for almost 30 years. We have contributed to the development of a high-quality economy. I'm thinking in particular of our assembly line in Tianjin, our engineering capacity in Beijing, our innovation centers in Shenzhen and Suzhou, and recently we have just opened a new aircraft dismantling and storage capacity. Therefore, this cooperation at the aviation level is extremely rich, and we hope that it will continue in the future.
Airbus' latest investment in China is a joint venture company with Tarmac Aerosave and the Chengdu Shuangliu District government that will service the entire life cycle of an aircraft. It will cover a range of aircraft models, providing a one-stop service from parking, storage, maintenance, upgrades, refurbishment to dismantling and recycling.
We were thinking that it was providing value to the market, be able to dismantle the aircraft in a sustainable way, in a green way, because of course we want air transport to be as clean as possible. Our strategy is really to have more vertical integration in China, so to be able to manufacture locally what we would need to finally assemble our aircraft. And that's the same for services, where we think that there is a very robust aviation footprint in China and here in Chengdu, for example. And this is what we want to leverage to further develop our services activity in line with the projection I was sharing with you earlier.
Airbus's collaboration with its Chinese partners spans the entire industry chain, covering procurement, major component production and installation, aircraft final assembly and delivery, operation support, aviation service cooperation, and aircraft recycling. The aircraft manufacturer has around 200 suppliers in China. It says the value of its collaborations in the Chinese aviation industry reached around $1 billion in 2020. Ning Hong, CGTN, Beijing.
It's nearly time for Rio de Janeiro's world-famous carnival, with locals and visitors limbering up for the festivities. Last year's carnival saw a $200 million bump to the Brazilian city, according to Rio's mayor, a boon for local businesses. CGTN's Lucrecia Franco reports.
Thundering percussion, shimmying shoulders and rattling bones. It's the kickoff of unfettered fun and fantasy season in Brazil. This is just one of the over 450 blocos or street parties that have been approved by Rio de Janeiro City Hall to perform during the city's world-famous carnival. Its name, Desliga da Justiça, Switch Off Justice, is a play on words from the famous comic book Justice League, with homemade costumes and face paint bringing heroes and villains to life tongue-in-cheek for a few hours on a Saturday morning. Showing off her samba moves, Suelen Batista says she loves to project power.
I dressed up as Batwoman because she symbolizes the strength of women, warriors, always moving forward, brave and constantly chasing what they want.
Street parties are key to the city's economy, says Ronnie Costa, the head of Rio Tour, the city's tourism company. He estimates 5 million revelers will join the festivities.
Last year, we injected over $200 million into the city just from the street carnival, and we believe we will surpass that figure this year. Hotels are at nearly full capacity, and restaurants and bars are all benefiting from this big bash.
For Rio's Carioca residents, Carnival is the most anticipated event of the year. Many, like this medical doctor turned French comic book character Obelix, rehearse for months to perform in public.
The only thing I need to do is dye my beard and dress up. The rest of me, including the big belly, is exactly like him.
Founded in 2009, Desliga da Justiça is celebrating 15 years of superpower partying on the streets of Rio.
People here say that these free-for-all neighborhood parties embody the true spirit of Rio's Carnival, a time of the year that brings out Brazil's passion for samba, joy, and creativity.
And this is just a warm-up for the next 3 weeks of partying that will culminate with the world-famous Sambadrome parades, ending on February 17th. And these crime fighters and criminals will need to muster all of their powers to endure to the end. Lucrecia Franco, CGTN, Rio de Janeiro.
Japan's moonlander has resumed operations more than a week after it ran out of electricity. Japan became the 5th country to put a spacecraft on the moon, but it landed upside down, blocking its solar panels from the sun. The country's space agency says the glitch has been fixed thanks to a shift in lighting conditions. The probe is analysing rocks on the lunar surface to search for clues about the origin of the moon. Our headlines again. Iran denies involvement in a drone attack on a base in Jordan, which killed 3 US soldiers and injured dozens. The US has vowed to respond to the strike, the first American military death since the Israel-Hamas conflict started. And Israel launches renewed assaults on Gaza City amid claims it's killed dozens of Hamas fighters. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, though, from all the team here in London, goodbye.